3, 2, 1. Okay, good day everyone. Good day, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another financial modeling section brought to you by UrBizEdge. So for today's session, we're having a special guest by the name Victor Ogundele. We'll be taking us on the topic incorporating scenario using a one-way assumption approach. So this section is brought to you by the collaboration between UrBizEdge and also the Financial Modeling Institute. So the Financial Modeling Institute is one of the most respected accreditation centers for financial modelers. There are different financial modeling levels, such as the Advanced Financial Modeler, Chartered Financial Modeler, and also Master Financial Modeler. So you can also check them out. So I'll give a brief description about ourselves, UrBizEdge. So UrBizEdge is a registered Microsoft Excel consulting, financial modeling, business intelligence, data analysis, and enterprise solution firm in Nigeria. We also specialize in helping companies and high-value professionals be on top of the business data. We're also the developer of some Nigerian tools which you can also find in Microsoft Office, such as the Nigerian Finance Market Analysis tool, also the developer of the Nigerian Stock Analysis Dashboard, and so many other ones. So we're also a training company also in Lagos, Nigeria. We also have branches in Lagos. So for our upcoming trainings, which is on the 18th of November, which is on a Friday, we're having in-depth Excel, executive dashboard, and also business data analysis. On the 18th also, that same day on the 18th of November, we're having big data analysis. On the 24th of November, we're having business intelligence and dashboard using Microsoft. So I'll give a brief description about our special guest, Mr. Victor Ogundele, which is someone that has almost all the certificates. So he's an experienced certified financial modeler, financial analyst, also a Microsoft MVP, that's Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, and also a corporate finance trainer. He has worked on over 150 financial modeling projects across industry globally, and has also trained over 1,500 top executive personnel on financial modeling. He's a dedicated person who likes to deal with reality and think outside the box, loves learning and also loves teaching. He has different skills which include financial modeling and evaluation. He's also an FMI certified. He also has corporate finance modeling, which is also an FMVA certified. I actually checked the meaning of all this. These are top certification. He's also a project finance modeling. That's a modeler. That is also WallStreetMojo certified. Data presentation, IBCS certified. Training and facilitation, financial analysis and accounting, Excel, Power BI, and also Office 365. So we have Victor Ogundele, which is also a senior investment banker, senior investment banking analyst, and also a Microsoft MVP. I had to crop some of the certification because he has a lot. So no further ado, I'll stop sharing my screen and hand over the session to Victor. So Victor, over to you. So I'll stop sharing my screen right about now.
All right. Thank you for the video. So starting from scratch, this is my blank Excel. Right. And let me just try and collapse these first 3 columns. Yes. I just like doing that, just to create that beautiful outline. So let's assume we have a business concept, right? I'm even going to use one of our popular products. Let's say we have a client, right? And what they want to be doing is they just want to be selling the pack, so it's more like a distribution. So let me just a distribution firm, right? That will be selling. Which product can we use? Can anyone guess? Okay, maybe that will be selling. Let's say Nestle bottled water. Yes, I think this will be fine. So let's assume this is what the business will be doing. So let me rename this worksheet. Should I call it? Let me call this our. Okay, let me call this our input. Yes, let's call this our input. Now, a company that will be selling Nestle bottled water. When it comes to revenue, when it comes to forecasting revenue, we all understand that before you, irrespective of the business you are doing, you definitely need a 2 components to calculate your revenue, irrespective of how you want to do it, right? You could have millions of calculations. At the end, it must always result back to price multiplied by quantity. So let's assume for Nestle, so let me call this one. Let's call this one. So let's assume we have a price. Let me just call this price. And here it, and let me call this description. So when I build my model, I just like making things look good. So okay, so let's just use a dollar. Let's use a dollar, and this should be per pack. So assume that would be per pack. Now, in our typical way of building our model, you need to create a period. So maybe I'm saying for my model, I will have, let's say year one. Let's say I'm going to have year one, right? And I'm going to drag it for just like 5 years. So let me align this to the right. So I'm saying, hey, so what will be the price? We'll be selling this pack in year one, in year two, year three, in year four, and year five. Then I'll put that. But for this approach that we want to build, we want to use now, we are not going to use this approach of having it in year one, year two, year three, year four, or something like that. We are going to have something we call different scenarios. But before we create that, let's first create our base assumption. So let's say for our price, our base price, maybe we should say they'll be selling that. I'm just going to give in some fictitious assumption, right? Don't mind me. So let's say 50. Okay, so let me format my Excel so that I can always have as a financial analyst, whenever you are kind of dealing with figures, it's always good you format your values to always have one decimal point. Yes, because it's good. So I think let me just do that. Okay, so any value that I put will always be in one decimal. So let's assume our pricing, and remember our first standard whenever you are building your model. Anything that's input sales type should always have a unique sales type. So just going to put that. We have our price. So if we have our price, then definitely we need to have our unit cost. But let's just call this our variable. Let's use variable cost. Let's use the approach of our management accounting. So then maybe we are saying variable cost per pack. We keep that at 38.5. I think that's good. So now, remember, we are going to forecast for 5 years. To keep that in mind. We are going to use a single input cell approach such that it will be very easy for us to create multiple scenarios around this. In fact, instead of calling this input, let me rename it to, let me even call it scenario. Let's call it scenario or scenarios. Okay, scenarios. Right? So let me I just, when I'm building my model, I like making things look professional. So I'm going to call this, let me call this my operations. I'm going to call this my operations, right? I'm just put it in a typical red color. This part is part of professionalism as you are building it. So this part of the operations, right? And then we already have our pricing, we have our variable cost. So let's assume we have our fixed cost, or let's even call it our OPEX costs. So, but for this one, let's say this would be more like OPEX per month. This value per month. So in fact, let's even put it. So OPEX, just trying to see the better way. Okay, because I want this to be in million values. Let's assume this will be in million. Then OPEX, we can put monthly per month. I want to manage that space. Try to manage that space. Okay, so let's say monthly, right? Maybe an average of how much can we have? Let's just put just some fictitious assumption. Let's just say for now 1.5. They're not too small, right? But okay, by the time we start doing the calculation, we can always come back. But let's just put in maybe 1.5 is good now. Oh, okay, 3.5 million per month. Now, remember, this is a single cell input style. But we are going to forecast for 5 years. And the purpose of financial modeling is to be able to remove human input effect whenever you are building your model. Right? So this one, under this one, I'm now going to call this, let me call this my macroeconomic drivers. And under this, I'm going to have let's assume I'm going to have my inflation rate or we could even call it cost incremental factor, right? So this would be in percent. Just for the purpose of this our training, I'm just going to put a random percent there. Yes. So let me say that would be 5.5. Right. Then we definitely going to need our pricing incremental. So let me work smart. Let me duplicate this and let me change the cost to pricing incremental factor. Right. So let's assume our pricing incremental factor will be, let's just put it as 2.5. So these are just fictitious assumptions. But if you are building your model, definitely you know that your cost incremental rate will be your country inflation rate. Your pricing incremental rate will be your CPI. Because remember, it's not as if you are just generating value from nowhere. Because just for the purpose of our training, we can't be, and to save time, right? So we have a macroeconomic assumption. So cost incremental factor. We have a pricing incremental factor. Which other one can we have? So it's just for us to be able to forecast our simple business operation. So I think we should, so under this, before these are variable costs, so let's have one. So I'm going to let's add one here and let it stand on its own. That will be our quantity. This will be for our quantity. So please, in case you have any question, you can always type in the chat box. And let's say this would be units. This would be packs per month. Packs or pack, anyone. But let's just say this will be our pack per month, average pack that we expect them to sell. So at least for now, let's just keep it, let's say 5,000 a month. Right? Now, let's now assume this will be let's call this our base case. This will be our base case for our model, which is what we are going to use in our model build. Now, I'll come here and I'm going to cut it. But before I do that, let's add one additional line item here. So let's call this our sensitivity. Let me work smart. I'll just copy this, put it here, then rename it to sensitivity. I hope I'm correct. Don't mind mine. So for the sensitivity, we are going to sensitize our revenue, sensitize our variable cost, and also sensitize our PEX. To decide to even sensitize other things, right? So let's keep it short. Let's keep it short like this. So this will be our base case. But let me cut it. So for this, our sensitivity, I'm just going to put everything here as 100%. So you see how we are going to apply this when we are building our model. So 100%. Because most time when it comes to project finance, as I said, we use this kind of approach in project finance, and you have to create those different scenarios, then share it with your clients for you guys to agree, so they feed you with their own different assumption as well. So our case one, but let's even call it case one. So let's use base case. So case one, and I'm going to just drag. Let's assume we can have like 10 cases. You can have as much cases as you want. But let's have 10 cases. So this is not like a court case. Just keep in mind, it's just a scenario of a thing. So let me just copy. Let me paste this with the blue and the white font. So it's a scenario. It's not a case. We are not going to cut. We are not going to cut. So remember that. And let me freeze my panel. Okay. I think we still need one more space here. So here I'm going to call this. I'm going to name this our case. So this will be our data in use. So call this data in use. Right? For this data in use. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy everything here. Just copy it to the right. Everything being equal. So for this, you kind of have two approaches, but most time it's always good you kind of add code everything out yourself. Right? So you could decide to say, oh, maybe case one will be our price will be plus 2%, our case 3 will be plus minus something percent or all those things. But for this one, let's just use some random value. Let's use some random value. So I think I need to freeze let me reduce this column. But this, let me reduce the front of our units. Okay, so that's very easy. So here, case in use, let me reduce this. So as you are building as a modeler, you also need to learn how to structure your model very well as part of the skill of a financial modeler. So price, let's assume this will, let's say this will just be plus maybe 55. They'll just be having different prices. So that we can work smart. Let me look at our variable cost percent to our revenue. So our price, our variable costs. Okay, so that I know that anytime I change the pricing, it should just affect it. It's just keeping everything being equal. But just for us to be able to get those pictures assumption now. So on our pricing, we're saying, hey, case 1. So case 3, let's say 52.5. So you can have multiple prices in your model, right? Or you could decide to even keep everything constant. Okay, I think we should even use that approach. Let me delete this and put it back to what we had earlier. So let's use this approach. Let's assume for now everything being equal. How many line items do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I think this 3, this 5, right? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, it's not even up to 10, so that's good. So which means you can have multiple cases. That's the good part, good thing about this. Now for this, let's now see how this works. So we are saying, hey, base case. I'm going to put a note here and I'm going to say base assumptions. Base assumptions. So let me wrap that. Let me wrap this. So base assumption. So now let's do some Excel texting thing. That's the next thing that we are doing now. So this can be very, very big at times. So let me centralize it. So these are base assumptions. Let me just color this. Let me color this. Don't mind me. I like designing my model as I'm building them. Right. Okay. So maybe let's put a border. Let's put a border across. Okay. So let me remove the grid line. So go to my view. I will tick my grid line. So that's more like a plain paper. So these are base assumptions. So for this second assumption, maybe we are saying everything being constant. Maybe we are saying 10% increase in our price. Every other thing being equal. Right? I think let me just copy these formats across so that I don't need to be doing double work. Okay. So that will represent our case 2. So if that's the case, remember, we are saying, hey, everything being equal, every other assumptions being equal, what if we have a 10% increase in our price? So that means you need to come here and you do that formula. So base multiplied by 1 plus my 10%. So now remember, this is an input. You cannot leave a formula inside an input sales type. So I'll just type it back just to be sure that yes, 55%. Now let's say the next case, which is our case 3. So maybe let me centralize everything. It should be centralized. So for our case 3, I think I need to freeze the panel. So let me freeze my panel here. Okay. So for our case 3, we are saying 10% in all our costs. So which means our variable cost will be increased by 10%, keeping our price at 50, every other thing being equal. You understand that? So every other thing being equal, we are saying, what if we had 10% increase in our variable cost? So this multiplied by 1 plus my 10%. So that's why I said you could also decide to use the other approach. So let me look at what we have here. Okay, 42.35. So 42.35. I'll type that. So you could, as I said, you could also decide to use the other approach. So instead of typing that percent, you could have somewhere you type the 10% and you can, but it's always good you keep this straightforward and very, very simple. Right? So 10% in all costs. So our variable cost will increase and our OPEX 2 will increase by 10%. 1 plus 10%. 1 plus 10%. Enter. So that's 3.9. Let me check. Okay, 3.85. I should just put this one into decimal point so that it's easy to see the value. Okay. So OPEX, 10% in all our costs. So our cost, variable cost, and OPEX. So here, this one, let's even say 15% increase in OPEX, right? And maybe 2% increase in price. What about that? Let's look at this another scenario. So you can have a combination of different scenario as well. So let me just align this. So that's okay. Everything is started from the okay. Yeah. So 15% increase in our OPEX. So I'll come here, right? This is my 3.5. This is my 3.5. So equal to, let me just use one of the 3.5 here. Right? Multiply by my bracket 1 plus. So that one will be 15% increase. And what will that give us? F2, F9. That will be, so let's just say 4.03. That will be our cost. Then our OPEX, our pricing, we are saying, okay, every other price is supposed to be at 50%. Let me change that back. So for this, we're saying 2% increase in our price, right? So which means this 50 multiplied by my bracket 1 plus the 2%. Enter, press my F2, F9 to see the actual value, which is 51. So you can see that. So you can have multiple scenarios. In fact, this scenario, I could even decide that, oh, what if our, let's say every other thing being equal, what if our quantity, so 10, what if we have like 10% increase in quantity? So which means we can actually have a 3 scenario. We can have 3 or 4 line items that can affect almost everything here. So, okay, yes. So I think we have remembered the other line assumption that we need. So we also need our quantity growth factor. Yes. So that's what we are post. That's what we drive. Let me duplicate this and let me call this quantity growth. So our quantity growth. So for our quantity growth, let's just put that maybe 15%. Right. So here we're saying 10% increase in quantity. Because I'll come to my quantity and I'm saying maybe just my base here to use this and get the assumption, then 10%. Enter. So that's 5,500 to have that. So you can have multiple scenarios that you can create like this. And this kind of gives room as to our normal typical approach of building our scenario where you just have base case, worst case, and this one you need to can have like 20 different scenario like this. Just say every other thing being equal. What if there's something in this? What if there's something in this? For example, let me say my case 6. Let's say our pricing growth 0% of our pricing rates, pricing incremental rates, and what? And let's say our quantity kind of fall by and a decrease of let's say 5% in quantity. Right? So let me expand this. Okay. And let's say we have a 5% increase, a 5% decrease in our what? In our quantity. So which means I need to come to my pricing and I'm saying, hey, let's keep pricing constant, 0%. And my quantity should be decreased by 5%. So that means our 5%, which is our base, multiplied by my bracket 1 minus the 5%. So that means we are going to sell 4,750. Enter. So that's another case. So you can have multiple scenarios like that in your model. So 5% decrease in quantity. Let's also say 5% decrease in the quantity growth as well. So instead of 15%, it should be 10%. Now with this, I now need to create something we call our switch box. Now, by the time I'm through with the model and I want to share it with my clients, I want my client to be restricted to certain selection. So what I can do is I can come somewhere here, maybe down here, and just call this my, let me just call this my scenario list. Right? I'm going to type 1. So I think if I click on my odds and I drag down, should that be hot? Right? And I drag down, okay, my control, and I drag down should just automatically increase the number for me. Okay, what's happening? Okay, so let me just click view series, then control 1. Let me format it so that it's showing in a case. Just format it to show a case. So case 1, case 2, up to case 10. Right? Then I'll type 1 here, which will be our scenario switch. It will be our scenario switch. So 1, just make it general. Okay, yes. So I can go ahead and rename this. This will be our scenario switch. So let me just call this one scenario. Go to my name box, scenario underscore switch. Enter. Come down here. Call this one our scenario underscore list. So it's always good you remember the naming range, so that by the time you create your combo box, it's easy for you to remember. Now here, I'll come here, type equal to. So let me just link this. Okay, so before I link that, let me even create one additional space here. And I'm going to type equal to. I'll use index. I think index is good. You can also use choose function. So equal to index. Where's my array? Then I will highlight everything that I've created under this scenario, comma. There's nothing in the row, but I want it to select it as column. And remember our switch box, which is this one that we created here. So if I click on it, it's going to bring the name for me, the scenario switch, and I'll close the bracket and press enter. So I can just copy the formula, copy it down, other line item. Copy, so let me put everything into decimal. Right, so which means this is what, okay, I'm not yet done. I still need to do this one. So let's add one more scenario to it. So here, let's say for this scenario, let's say 10%. So maybe this will be 10%. So this will be for the sensitivities. 10% increase, 10% increase in revenue, right? Or let's even say 10% decrease. Yes, I think decrease will be fine. 10% decrease in revenue, and 5% increase in OPEX. That we also understand how that's the sensitivity that we've created, how it works. That means I'll need to come down here. I'm saying my revenue will be decreased by 10%, right? So that means this will become 90%. I'm saying my OPEX will increase by 5%. So this will be 105. Like that. So we want to see what will be the impact on the business profit. So you can create other scenario like that. Maybe let's say this other scenario, we are saying a 10% increase in revenue and the same, let's say the same 50. Okay, let's even say 15% increase in our variable cost. What will be the impact on the business profits? So that means revenue of 100% will now be 110%, and my variable cost will now be 115%. Not straightforward like that. So now with this, let me just create the combo box before we go ahead and use this assumption. So I think I can just put this one in brackets. Yep. So just to make it look good. To also give that reference that say this is being linked from one of the scenario that you have here. So you can see now. So you can have like 20 different cases with their different options. So the one in use, let me just copy the formula here. Control C, and let me paste as formulas. so that we can have, let me wrap the text as well to margin center. Any case that has been chosen, we automatically come in here. So now for the scenario switch, the combo box, I need to go to my developer tab. In case you don't have developer tab in your own, I need to activate it. So developer tab, click on my insert, and I will select my combo box. Once I select my combo box, I can just draw it around. So maybe let me just draw it inside here. Let me draw it inside here. Draw it inside here. So I will right click, faster, click on my format control, my input range, which I call the name, right? So range that we call that scenario underscore list. So and the second one we call it scenario underscore switch. Right? So the spelling must be the same thing with what you use in your name range. So now immediately I change that. What has happened is this. We've taken away the control from this, our scenario switch that we created. You can see that it automatically go back to 0. So in your own, it might give error just of value, but my own is showing splits. It's showing split. So if I click on the drop down option, you can see that I can select the case. So I can select case 1, see what will happen. To bring it out, select case 2, 100% increase in price, select case 3. So 10% in all costs, select case 4. So you can see how it's very, very easy for you to select from any of the scenario. So now we've created this, our assumptions with this approach of our what? Of a single cell inputs, using them to create different scenarios. You can see how easy this one is. It also gives room for you to be able to incorporate different sensitivity testing of your model. So now that we've done this, the next thing is for us to now go ahead and let's create our, let me call this our calculations. And even our calculation and put inside there. So let me go ahead and let's see how we now apply this scenario. So I'm going to call this. So let's call this our period. Okay, so description, my unit. So this will become a linked cell style. Then we can have our year 1, then up to year 5. Okay. Okay. So let me just make it look good. Just doing my, just make a border around it, and even fill it, something like that. Just doing some design work, don't mind. So then let's start with our revenue. Let's calculate our revenue. For revenue, definitely we need our price. So, but before we do that, let's first calculate our macroeconomic assumption factor first. So let's calculate our macro. Just shorten that because of our time. So our cost incremental factor, let me bring them here. So we only need, let's use this. Incremental rates, which will definitely be in percent. And what are we using for that? So equal to, I'll just link it to this single input cell. So remember, our standard is also saying when you are building your model, you should always have a sales tag guide. Anything that you are linking, you should always have that. But for this purpose, let's just, because of our time, cannot be creating that. Let's just put it like this. So now that we have this, I think we also need our period count. Okay, so for our period counts, okay, yeah, let's just have our period counts here. Period count. Maybe I should write this fully. Economy. So our period count, base year plus 1, copy that for the 5 years period. So using that, so equal to, let's use this our growth formula, 1 plus our cost incremental rate, which I'm going to log the column. So by the time I copy it to the right, copy it down, trying to work smart. Then raise 2, open my brackets, my period here, minus 1. Close the brackets and press enter. So I can just copy it down as well. And copy it for the other years. I can put them, just put it in our X type, our multiple cell type, like this. So this becomes our what? This become our what? Okay, so something is okay. Forgot to log the row. So as a modeler, when you build your model, you should always know what your output's supposed to be. Yeah, so by the time you make mistake, you quickly do the adjustment. So for our revenue, so now that we've done that, for our revenue, we need our pricing. We need our pricing, which we said is what? So our pricing, $1 per pack. There here. Then I can just copy this format, put it here, and type equal to, then link that to my scenario. This is my price, right? Then I'll come in here and I'm saying equal to this my base price multiplied by what? Multiplied by my pricing incremental factor. Right. So as compared to the other approach where you just set everything as an input for all the 5 years, the advantage of that is just I'll give that room for the flexibility where they can, maybe in year 3 we might increase our price and the other thing. But this is making use of the macroeconomic effects in getting this. So if I see, for us to see what we are doing, if I copy this, our scenario switch, I copy it and I bring it here. So let's assume I just put it, let me just paste it somewhere around there. Let's put it around there and let me freeze my panel. So if I select my case 2, see that, I think anything that we have, so you can even link it to a scenario so that it's also easy for us to see directly from here. Right? So let me reduce that front. I'll put it in something red. Okay, so in case they select case 1 is base assumption. You show them base assumption, select base 2, which is affecting the price. So you can see immediately the price increase, 10% increase in price. Go back to case 1, just go back to the base assumption. So that's the beauty of that. So that's our price. Then for our quantity, right? So I can just copy this unit that I have here. Just works. Let me a lazy modeler get things done faster. Okay, we need the quantity. We need the quantity, 5,000 per month, right? So I think you also need a month in a period. So we need a month in a period, which will be 12 months, right? So put it in input. We also decide to even put this in the scenario as well, right? But I think 12 will always be 12, but don't hard code it. Don't hard code it. So here, you're saying on average, okay, so that means we need our growth that we have here. So our quantity growth, okay. So which we said that will be 15%. That will be 15%. We are keeping that constant for our forecast period. So just link that. It's in our set. Copy it. So it's the same thing. So which means we are saying equal to, so that quantity, let's assume is based on annual. So in case your own is monthly, you need to also state that. So equal to, which means we first need to get for our base period here. Let me add one here. Let me add one column here. So for our base period, we are saying equal to, okay, so let's assume the first year is the same thing as business. So we don't need to do that. So let me just do that. So I'm saying equal to my 5,000, right? Then multiply by the months in a period, which is 12 months. Enter. So which means this is the total unit they are going to sell yearly. So then I'm saying if this is what they are selling, so 1 plus the quantity growth, which is the 15% for the respective period. Then which means we can then have our revenue calculation, which will be in our dollar currency. That's basically our price multiplied by our quantity. So which is what we have as our revenue. Since this revenue is way high, we should reduce this quantity. But let's look at that. That's fine. Then on our part of direct costs, let's have our cost. So the first cost will be our variable cost. So let me just copy this format. Let me put it here. For our variable costs, you said this is what we have, 38.5. Right, so which means, as I said, a lazy modeler gets things done faster. So what I'm going to do is I will come to this my pricing calculation that I've done. Right. Let me log this. Okay. So I'll just copy it, come down here, paste it, then move this my costs, my growth effects. Okay, no, that's not what we want. Okay, yes, I think it's correct too. So let me come back here. I want to work smart. Yes. So equal to, can come here. I'll paste it. Then I'll just move this guy. Double click on it. Move this one straight to our cost incrementer because that is cost. And I'll drag that for the period. So our total variable cost. So let's also bring this. Just like keeping things. So this will just be per year now, no longer per month. I can link that. There's also a link sales style. Just link that to my quantity that I have here. Right, and now we have my total variable cost. We have our total variable cost. Let me just copy this format, put it here. So total variable costs. So how about that? That will be our variable cost multiplied by our what? Our quantity. Then we have this. The total variable cost. Now for our OPEX, our operating cost. So let me also link that. So what we have for our OPEX, we're saying that will be 3.5 million monthly. So which means I need to convert this to yearly. So this multiplied by our 12, enter, right? 3.5, which I'm going to, let me keep the 3.5, the column constant, multiply by what? Multiply by our 12, so which is this. Then after that, now multiply that by our costs incremental factor. Now copy that to the right. Okay, yeah. So then we know that this is our OPEX. So remember, this is a million. So we need to multiply this by 1 million. So you could decide to type that 1 million somewhere as a single input cell. I think that's what we should do. I don't like doing all this. I don't like typing inside my formula. So I'll call this divisibility. Right? I'm going to call this. Let me just put this in my input cell style. Okay, which one is this? So let me just put this in my input cell style. I'm going to type with this one, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. So I can just rename this to million in my formula bar, my name range, right? My name box. So which means I can come here, then multiply this my OPEX, then multiply by the millions. Enter. Copy that for the other years. Make sure that you are seeing that this our OPEX is extremely high, more than the revenue. Right, so maybe you need to go back and reduce that OPEX. So it's a million, maybe 0.75. Should I start this making sense? Is this still making sense or it's too much? Remember that we are working with a fictitious assumption, so that's why we are seeing something like this. Maybe we should change this to something like 0.50. But don't worry, we can always come back to this. So here we have our OPEX, we have our fixed cost. So then we can then go ahead and have our output. So let me work smart. Let me duplicate this worksheet and let me call this our output. And I can delete everything here. Let me remove everything here. So for the name range that I created, that millions is also going to duplicate itself here. So you see that we're going to have a 2 million. So let me delete the 1 inside output so that we can have only 1 million name range. Okay, so we'll just call this our income statement. Call this our income statement. We're going to have our revenue. We're going to have our variable cost. We're going to have our gross profits or contribution. Then we're going to have our fixed costs, or let's just call it OPEX. Then we're going to have our profits. So this will be our, let's put this, let this be in million units. Okay. So with this now, all we need to do is to just go ahead. Let me reduce this column. Okay. So all we need to do is to go ahead and just link that to our calculation. So this is our revenue, enter. So let me divide it by a million. So that it looks neat like this. So I think this is fine. Use the, okay. And our variable costs do the same thing, equal to, go to my calculation, my total variable costs divided by the million. So that we have it, and our gross profit will then be this minus our revenue minus our variable costs. So that this is what we have for our variable costs. Then our OPEX do the same thing. And that's what we have here divided by million. Right, and for our operating, our profit will be our gross profit minus our OPEX. So basically, this is telling us that, hey, I'm sure this project is worthwhile. So maybe we should increase our quantity. Would that be fine? No. Let's put our this OPEX to 0.25. So you definitely know that by the time you are building your own model, you definitely will be stating those expenses. So this one we are just doing the adjusting. It's not a good practice. You need to be able to know all your costs and be able to implement that in your model build. So you can see now with this, it seems the OPEX is way higher than the business. So what do we need to do? Let's see. What if we change our increase our quantity? So maybe this will be 6,000. So all those ones. So let's say 6,000. Let's see if that will work. Just want us to have a positive value. Let's just say 10,000 units. That will not be too much. 10,000 units. Okay, still at loss. That means that cost is way too high. Okay, I think this is better. So let's leave it like this. So 15, 15, 15, 15. So 15, 500 should be, just change this to 15. Keep every other thing the same way we have it. So I just want us to have a positive value. Now you can see this. And taking a look at this, I'm quite sure you can see something. It seems the revenue, yes, the profits was increasing, then year 4 decreased, then year 5 decreased significantly. Why do you think that is happening? So if you look at your macroeconomic assumption, you can see that pricing, you can see the growth in our pricing as compared to the growth in our costs increment. So which means the cost is actually moving way faster than your price, your product pricing. And this is more like a typical case of what happened in a normal day-to-day business, because your competitor here and there, you just cannot go ahead and increase your pricing. But here you have inflation is increasing and the whole thing, and that's where good management comes into play. So for this our own, I'm just going to leave it like that. Now for this scenario, for the sensitivity, type equal to. So what you can do is even, let's come here. We can even name it. We can use our naming range. So here, I'll come to my name box, and I'm going to call this my ref scenario or sensitivity. So maybe my ref sense. This will be for variable cost. So my variable cost sense. Then for my OPEX, we just call this my OPEX. That's called sensitivity, which means I can come here. This is my revenue that I forecasted in here. right? I'll now go and edit the formula. I'll put it in a bracket. Let me put both of them in a bracket, then multiply by my revenue. Now my revenue sensitivity that I created, enter. The same thing for my variable cost. I'll put it in a bracket and multiply by my what? My variable cost sensitivity. Then my OPEX, the same thing, put it in the bracket. It's in the bracket and multiply by my what? My OPEX sensitivity. So just highlight everything from the right, copy to the right. So let's look at our scenario. Which of the scenario do we have under sensitivity? So I think case 7. So if I come to my output and I select case 7, which is what 10% decrease in revenue and 5% increase in OPEX, it's so obvious that the business cannot survive. Right? So this is what we actually call a model, because it's in making informed decision. It's not as if you just create a model and you leave it out for your users to just be looking at it. You as a modeler, you always need to go at least a step further to be able to give them something that can aid their decision. So K7 is a 10% decrease in revenue and increase in OPEX. Basically, you are saying, let's even assume revenue fall. Do you think the business can survive? Right? For example, look at what happened during the pandemic period. Those are the kind of different scenarios that companies just try to play. Let's say, do you have anything in 10? So on that 10, 10% increase in revenue and 15% increase in variable cost. Now remember, that's our cost incremental factor is way higher than our pricing incremental factor. So you can see here, maybe year 1, year 2, year 3. Let's look at year 4, year 4, year 5. So they now start the planning of their growth strategies. What are the things that we need to do? What are the things that we need to do? And because that's just kind of guide the decision making. So you don't just build a model and say, hey, revenue will just keep growing on a straight line. Cost will keep growing. And revenue and profit too will be growing on a straight line. It really does not work like that. If it works like that, trust me, most businesses that just went off would not have. Right. So as a modeler, you also need to help the business owner to model reality into the business. So you don't just say keep your OPEX, your operational cost will be constant for the forecast year. No, let's factor in the effect of some macroeconomic assumption. And with this, it's easy for them to just select any case. Case 1, this is the base assumption. Case 2 is saying 10% increase in price. You can see 10% increase in price. Everything seems to be looking so sweet. But they should not forget that what if some other things? What if revenue is even the same thing based on what we forecasted? And variable cost increased by 10%, OPEX increased by 10%. Because you are especially for a manufacturing firm, and you kind of have some external power, right, that regulates your pricing. If your other competitors are selling at this price, you cannot just go ahead and increase your own pricing. But inflation is happening here and there. How do you, what will be the effects on your business model? And that is how we kind of build this approach of model, which kind of give room for decision making to business owner. So my time is exhausted and I'm going to drop my mic here. And if you have any question, need any further clarification to everything we've done, you can go ahead and ask. I'm sure the recording will also be made available. I know I'm